get started. So everyone, again, thank you for joining us today. Another episode of our webinar series going above and beyond paid advertising with Google. Today, we're going to be talking about the components of an SEO strategy and what's right for your business. And today I have the pleasure of sharing the virtual stage with Daniel Gouw from EDNA Digital Marketing. Daniel Gouw is the senior strategist at EDNA Digital Marketing, an LA-based digital marketing company. He's the best-selling author of the book, The Art of Getting More Customers. He's been featured on ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox News. More importantly, he's been an instructor for the SBA in digital marketing for over 4 years, and he's also been a frequent guest speaker for business associations, Chamber of Commerce, and national and international companies. So, Daniel, thank you for joining us today. A pleasure to have you here.
It's my pleasure to be here, Frank.
Today, we're going to be talking about a subject that seems to be pretty popular right now, especially with the latest changes in Google's algorithms and how we've seen the behavior of paid advertising after COVID and the pandemic and the change in user behavior. It's going to be a pretty basic overview on SEO and the why of SEO, as well as some tips and personal experiences Daniel and I have gone through each one in our agencies with our customers, and some things that we've seen that work best for most customers and some things that we would also not recommend for most customers. So we're going to cover a bit on the why the product makes sense, which seems to be a pretty basic question, but it's something that we still come across a lot when we talk to customers. We're going to be talking as well about understanding the algorithm, not only why it's important to focus on SEO, but how to understand what's going on to make sure that it's actually efficient. Some recommendations we have in regards to strategy, and how to make sure that you're measuring the SEO efforts correctly. So you're actually getting the most out of the investment that you're putting into SEO, and that you're able to see what works and what doesn't. So to get started, we're going to cover why SEO. And even though this seems to be a pretty simple question, like I mentioned before, we still come across a lot of customers and potential partners that question if SEO is actually a product that's a good fit for them. A lot of customers that we talk to feel that they've covered all grounds with their paid strategy. So, I have my ads ranking pretty high, so I've covered most of the search engine that I need to cover. I have Facebook ads that complement my strategy. So why should I invest in organic? But for us, organic is still such a strong product, particularly now with the changes that we're seeing in privacy guidelines and the deprecation of third-party cookies, that we like to bring the conversation to the table to make sure that most customers, if they can, they diversify their strategy to have SEO there. SEO is a good source, obviously, of awareness, of organic traffic, etc., but it's a very important source of ROI and revenue and leads for your business. What we're seeing in most customer journeys is that SEO and organic touch points are extremely important. And when we remove the optimizations from the organic part, we see a lot of drops in those funnels. Basically, if you're not present through the organic journey, there's high chances that you're going to miss that opportunity to get customers. What we've seen is that the more you optimize, the more you focus on relevant content, and the more you're present organically as well, the chances of capturing that customer versus your competitor doing it are significantly high. And since SEO is such a popular product, when we talk to our customer and we do competitor research, we see that most of their competitors have invested the resources and the time to rank higher. So this is a question that might still come up with your customers, or that you still might have internally as well. But it's important to understand how relevant SEO can be for the journey, and how important it is to have a set strategy in place rather than just set it and forget it and think that whatever you've done organically works. Daniel, on your end, how is it coming up with your customers? Do you hear this often? Because for me, it's still a bit weird because SEO is a product that's been around for a while. But more and more, we see people questioning SEO and its effectiveness. Are you seeing that on your end? What's usually the conversation like?
Yeah, absolutely, Frank. And I agree with everything you said as far as the importance of SEO and you and your business being found online. Now, the one thing is that when you simplify it is for yourself, Frank, when you're looking for a new business, what do? You're probably going to go to Google and then do a search for the business or whoever you're looking for in your local area. Now, I do the exact same thing. So both of our experiences is very common with what everyone else is doing. And so businesses need to think, well, if they want to be found by their potential customers, however they do their searching, if you're not being found up high in the search rankings, then people aren't going to find you. So that's why SEO is a very important component of being found online. It's more just comes down to the visibility, but there is a little bit of that mystery behind it, kind of like you alluded to, Frank. So, but it is extremely important.
Yeah, and I think when we think in terms of visibility as well, which is probably the key word here, is if you have an SEO strategy that's complementing your paid strategy and you're being aggressive in both, when someone searches for a relevant keyword to your service or to your product, you have a pretty high chance of capturing a good chunk of the top of the page. If you have the first paid result and then you have the first organic result and you have your Google business profile there, and even if you do e-commerce, if you have your shopping ad showing, or at least the free listings as well, you're capturing 70-75% of the top of the page of a search engine, and the probabilities of you being the one that takes the next step in the journey for that customer are significantly high. So we always try to emphasize that with customers. We actually present the image as well, so they see, if there's a market out there, wouldn't you want to have just the highest share that you can, so you have the highest opportunity capturing the lead? And the answer is usually yes, and that connects well with this idea of the visibility and the importance of the product.
Yeah, and that's what we tell businesses is like, you want to just completely dominate that top search bar. Is if you have the paid ads, you have the Google My Business, you have the organic, is that you have now 3 shots at getting somebody's attention very high up in the search.
Yes. And again, we have to remember that most customers are not alone in their efforts. There's competitors doing the same thing. So if you're not doing it, someone else will, and they're capitalizing on your traffic. Some of them even do it and they target your own brand name. So if you don't have a strong presence for your brand in paid and organic, someone might show up when someone's actually looking for your brand. Forget about your service or your product, but your actual brand name. And that's the worst thing that can happen to your business, right? Have a competitor show up when someone that in theory already has high intent is looking for you. And more importantly, Google is the way they've changed the algorithm and the way they change how people are exposed to content is really what's brought up, SEO at the top of the conversation. Again, Google focuses heavily on user experience now, not only on the technical optimizations that you do in the background, but how well do you satisfy the need of this particular customer for information. And that's extremely important because there's been this mindset in the SEO community about doing a lot of technical work and a lot of technical work for years. And we've gradually in the past 4 or 5 years switched to more content-based strategies, and content is king. But now we bring user experience into the mix. We're going to cover a bit more of that later down the line. But Google's switching towards that. So understanding why SEO is so important goes hand in hand with understanding why Google makes it so important for you and why they prioritize this type of content. There's a hot topic as well in regards to what Google's doing right now, and is the use of AI for your organic optimizations and SEO in general. This is a very interesting one for us because we try to embrace all the tools that are now available to use AI to improve your organic presence. And what we've seen is that it helps you with the process and it helps set the foundation for a lot of the things you do. But, SEO is still a very human to human experience and a human to human connection. So I don't know if you guys on your end have flirted with ChatGPT and all these AI tools that are showing up, if you're using it for content, or if you haven't had your customers ask about it, because we have customers ask about it all the time. Are you guys flirting with that? Have you tried them out? How's that work for you?
Yeah, we actually have just started trying out ChatGPT, and actually, it's a really cool tool. For those who haven't done it, I highly recommend you try it out. It's incredible. If nothing else, you see just what is in store for the future. Like this tool is extremely powerful. Of course, there are some limitations to, like, once you use it enough, you start to see the patterns of how it's giving you the information. But it's pretty incredible that this AI tool is out there for us and that we can use it. So far, most likely what we're going to be utilizing it for is more to supplement what we're already doing. So I think it's a bit bold to claim that this is going to replace all content writers, all copywriters. I think that's kind of a bold claim. However, I do think it could definitely supplement what the copywriters are doing. So instead of a copywriter taking an hour to write all these content pieces, maybe it only takes them 15 minutes, because they can use this tool to build out the framework of what they want to say, but they still need to go back, put that human touch into it, and just make sure that it's easy for people to read through it. And that's the thing that when it comes to SEO, like, they hear about ChatGPT, AI, all these different things. And this has been my experience when I talk with business owners and our clients, is that people believe it's a bit of a black box. It's, okay, we have this SEO thing out there, and people hear all different things about it. So they don't know what goes into it, how to make it work for you. They just hear SEO being found top of search, but they don't know what goes into it. And actually, some of the most common, I won't say questions, But I would say kind of the perceptions that people have that they believe about SEO is that, oh, can you just do it once and then I'm done? I'm like, well, I have to explain to them, hey, it's an ongoing thing. It's not something that you just set up once and then you're done. Now, on top of that as well, is something that we call black hat strategies. And Frank, I'm sure you understand
Yeah.
this part of it very well. Basically, black hat strategies is when people try and game Google's algorithm, they do it in a way that doesn't coincide with user experience, like you talked about, Frank. And that's something that we don't ever recommend it. We don't ever do it because a lot of people have gotten burned before with the updates from Google on when they try to use black hat strategies. So I recommend for everybody like who's listening, I'm really glad that you're here on this webinar learning from the top people, having Frank and his team learning from the top people in the industry. And that's why I would say, be careful who you listen to, because some people say, oh yeah, do this, do this, do this. And it's really a black hat strategy.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point, because the way I see it for the future of AI within the industry is that there are going to be people that are going to try to take advantage of the system by using AI and automating a good chunk of what a human should do. But Google has a way of catching those things. It's just a matter of time. They already adjusted the way the algorithm is working to identify content that is more relevant for humans. And I think that ties to our next topic, which is how does this algorithm work? And yes, AI can help you. We've used it. Our content writers are trying it out. We've been careful. Our CEO wrote a great post about this on LinkedIn yesterday, which is be careful with AI. For instance, when you're writing content and you start getting certain metrics or facts back, ChatGPT usually doesn't quote the sources. So in a lot of cases, you're flying blind in regards to what you're writing. So if you're writing about a particular industry and there's a metric in there, a percentage or a fact, you're not 100% sure where that's coming from. So publishing that alone without really doing the research and understanding the context can be very tricky. And Google can identify that. And it's just a matter of time before Google has a AI proofreader where they can, even though, there's no copyright issues there and AI is actually producing, custom material for you, Google can determine that it was written by a machine and not a human. And that's gradually going to impact what you do in the backend. So it's important to understand the use that these tools can have to help you automate certain tasks and make you more efficient, but you should never take the human off the wheel. And you should definitely not venture into these black hat strategies, which probably automation will make a lot easier to do, or it will be tempting to do it. Someone will go out there and promise you, faster ways of ranking, and you don't have to wait 6 months or 3 months, but I'll have you, the first page, first organic result in a month. And you'll hear that a lot. And with automation, some people might be able to do it in the short term, but it's a matter of time before Google actually punishes, these particular individuals doing these things, and it's actually going to hurt performance. And that's really how the algorithm works. That's why Google has so many updates throughout the years, because they see what drives behavior and they constantly try to change to improve the experience of users. They always talk about now embracing the user experience first. So if you're doing SEO, don't forget who you're doing it for. You have to make it easier for your ideal customer to navigate the journey for you. Your content should be interactive, and you should speak in a voice and in a tone that connects with them. What does this matter for SEO? It's simple. If you're producing content that's not connecting with your audience, you're going to have a higher bounce rate. You're going to have less time on the pages. You're going to have people clicking less on the links. They might go into your website, but if it's not connecting with them, the voice is not there and the tone is not there, you're not going to get great results. And Google knows that and eventually identifies that behavior and gradually will push you down the line. So it's important to understand that that's how the algorithm works. Yeah. And how important it is to keep a track of that. Yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, I think you bring up a very good point here, especially when we're talking about relevant content, because I get questions all the time as far as, well, what should I do? Like, how many words should this be? What should I talk about? And they have all these questions that are related to what is relevant. And so what I explain to people is that, well, the easy way to think about it is you have to think about it from Google's standpoint. And so if you think about it from Google's standpoint, it's a little bit easier to understand the overall framework of what Google is prioritizing when it comes to SEO. And so I basically start with, okay, when it comes to Google, what is Google's motivation? What's Google's best interest? And it's really to serve their searchers. Why is that? Because Google, they made $70 billion last year in ad revenue. So why do they make so much money, $70 billion? It's because so many people are using their platform. But why are so many people using their platform? It's because they're getting relevant results for their search terms. Now, if Google started showing irrelevant searches, then people are going to abandon the platform. Google's going to lose money. So if you think about it from understanding Google's perspective, that's what you need to think about when you're doing your SEO. Is this what I'm putting up here going to make the best sense, and it's going to be in Google's interest to give the most relevant content to someone searching for this? And when I explain it from that point of view, from Google's point of view, people understand a little bit more. Okay, I should be doing things to make Google happy because of this. It's in Google's best interest to do it this way. So I need to give Google that content in that format.
Yes, and it's a fair assessment to say that this is still a business for Google, because it's the biggest business that they have as a company. It's what generates more revenue. But through time, what they've learned is that it has to stay relevant for the user in order to work. So usually the intent that Google has is, yes, they want to generate more traffic so they can serve more ads and make more money. But they know for a fact that that cannot happen if the user experience is not good. They can't just rely on charging people for ads if the ad experience doesn't work out. So they invest all these resources and the changes in the algorithm and the changes that they do in the paid channels as well. Because they know that the more people enjoy and find what they're looking for through the search engine, the more likely they are to continue browsing. And that means more of a captive audience, more of a market share, and that more people going to Google for more things. And that ties pretty well, with their framework, the framework that they've always used and they've, done a lot more emphasis on right now, which is what they call the EAT framework, which is expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. What they value is that you're bringing something to the table that customers will actually want to see and that it resonates with them. The more of an expert you come off on your website on your particular, service or product, the more likely you are to rank. The more authority you have, so the more backlinks you have leading back to your website from reputable sources and people that someone else trusts in the industry, the more likely you are to show. And maybe the most important is how much can people trust you and trust your content? Are you just a brand new website that's putting things out there and that's it? Or are you quoting your sources? Do you have, a security certificate, which sounds basic, but we still see websites that don't have? Do you have, other sources quoting you, or other reputable sources? Do you have other voices that people follow in the industry connect with you? What are you doing in terms of experience so that people can trust who you are and validate your experience? And right before this session, we were talking about the importance of customers' reviews. Daniel, maybe you want to bring that up, because that's an extremely important topic when we talk about trustworthiness and the experience overall for the users.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to SEO, a lot of people are talking about SEO from the technical perspective, but there's not many who talk about it really from the social perspective. How are people having the social proof? And online reviews is actually probably, I would say, the most important social proof that you're going to have from an online perspective. And when I say online reviews, is that when you do a search online, let's just say plumbers in Los Angeles, you're going to see all these results that pop up. Now, who are you probably going to choose? It's most likely to be the person that has the best reviews. And I've been teaching for the EDNA Digital Marketing for 4 years. I've been doing this exact same example every single time in that class for 4 years, and the results are always consistent. I show 3 businesses, and I say, okay, out of these 3 businesses, who would you contact first? 95% of the class, every single time, chooses the business with the highest review score, bar none. Doesn't matter where they are in the rankings. Number 1, number 2, number 3, doesn't matter. They're always going to go for the one that has the highest review score. So this is something that a lot of businesses don't realize. They look at SEO almost with blinders on. They think, oh, as long as I get to the number 1 spot, I'm fine. But in reality, if you get to the number 1 spot, but you have no reviews or poor reviews, then people aren't going to choose you. They're actually going to go to your competitor who's number 2 or number 3. So online reviews play a massive role in it. And to even hammer this point home down even more, I give another example during my classes. And I say, okay, imagine that your best friend recommends this restaurant to you and says, you got to go to this restaurant. It's the best food I've ever had in my life. It's incredible. So I asked the class, okay, let's say your best friend tells you this. What would you normally do from there? Most people would Google it or Yelp it and see, okay, what are people saying about this restaurant? And from there, if I say, okay, let's say that you look at the online reviews and it's a 1.5 star and there's 300 reviews, would you still go to that restaurant? At that point, most people would say, no, I wouldn't go anymore. And I say, okay, well, that's actually how most people would respond. But I bring up to the point, it's actually very interesting. Someone that you know, your best friend, you know, you trust more than strangers, gave you this very strong recommendation. but you still took the word of 300 strangers over your friend who you're very close to. Think about that for a moment. You just trusted strangers versus your best friend. But that's the world we're in these days. Like, that's how most people make their buying decisions. So that's why online reviews plays a massive role in the social proof that ties in very well to SEO. So you can't ignore that part of it.
Yeah, no, and I think it's the core component of your social identity, whether it's a service or a product. And I think that's a key element of how our generation makes decisions, because this isn't just a Google, or search engine thing. If you go to Amazon, and we've all probably bought something on Amazon, we look at the stars, we look at the reviews, and it's a simple process. If a product doesn't have enough reviews or at least high reviews, it's likely not going to be purchased. That's kind of the entry level, the barrier that most people have in terms of entry level for products is get your product known and get good reviews first, and then you'll probably get some traction. Because if you don't have anyone, even if it's a stranger, like you mentioned, to validate what you are and who you are in the day and age where information can, be found in a second, it's tricky. You're probably missing some point there along the line that to capture that customer, in the customer journey. So if you're investing in an SEO strategy, strongly consider, review management as part of the strategy, whether you're doing it yourself or you hire a third party, because the voice that you control out there and how you control that voice, it makes a significant difference in how people perceive your product. And Google knows that not only at the organic level. Now you have local service ads, which is paid ads, it's a pay per lead service, but it's almost fully automated except for the review part. You can list your business for a local service ad and you put basic information, then Google will take care of the rest. But the one thing that determines how you rank is how many reviews you have. So if you don't have any reviews, you just don't show. And that's about it. There is no algorithm to, an auction or a bidding strategy, or if you pay more, you show. No, if you can validate your business and how good you are through public reviews, we'll show you. And if you cannot validate that, then we won't show you, no matter how much money you want to spend. So it's a very strong concept when you think about it, because it kind of goes against the business model itself. But it's Google's way of guaranteeing that whoever purchases your service or your product or finds you and chooses you gets the experience that they deserve. And if they get the experience that they deserve and that they're looking for, they're likely to come back to the engine and look for more things. So it's an extremely important point that I think a lot of people miss when they talk about strategy and what to include. And it's great that you brought it up, Dan. So, and talking about strategy, it's again, there's still a lot of concepts that revolve around the technical SEO and what to do in the back end and, the technical optimizations. But SEO is a lot more than that. Technical is just one aspect of what you need in terms of strategy. Offsite SEO, which is extremely important, is where you see most of the black hat strategies happen. It's also something that you need, your on-site SEO, and of course, the favorite one that we've had for a while, which is content and how content is king. But the interesting trend that we're seeing here as well is that how user experience is so closely tied with, organic experience and organic rankings now compared to how it was 10, 15, or 20 years ago. If there is a profession that has grown a lot in the past, probably in the past 8 or 10 years, is your UX engineers, people that are in charge of just making sure that whatever service, product, website, application you're running provides a good experience for users. And that goes hand in hand with all the work that you should be doing for your organic listings, and how to make sure that people actually get to your website and go through the funnel efficiently. And that goes from the technical things like, optimizing your titles and your headings and things of the sort, or making your website mobile friendly, but also how the flow feels. You might have a website that is technically perfect, but if it's not telling a story that adds value to that particular experience, users are still not going to go through with the process. Your page might load pretty quickly, but the experience has to be something relevant for users, especially if you're selling a product or a service that, has a lot of competitors. Maybe if you're your unique product, and that's different. They're not going to compare you with anyone. But if you're a plumber, you're a dentist, and there's hundreds of competitors in the same, area, why is your experience better? How does your experience on your website reflect your actual experience when someone goes into your store or your clinic for that matter? And tying that gap with all the technical work that you do in the back end is what's so important. A lot of SEO teams have now UX engineers as part of the SEO teams, making sure that whatever changes are made on the website isn't hurting the experience. I don't know, Dan, on your end, if you've considered that with the team, or if you've had the team, do some training in regards to that, but it's something that comes up all the time. And now we see the importance of it on the Google side as well.
Yeah, definitely. And when it comes to user experience, this is something that Google's been shifting more in that direction. And just to make it, SEO can be a very highly technical subject, but to make it simple, when you think about user experience, what's kind of the bottom line that Google's looking for? User experience really comes down to how much time are you spending on a website. So that's kind of the bottom line, what they're looking for. So from there, if you work your way backwards, okay, what goes into keeping people on the website for as long as possible? If the page speed is good, or it just doesn't take a long time to load, how responsive is it? Is the flow, like Frank, what you were talking about, is it that good? Is the content engaging? So the longer you can keep someone on the website, the more Google is going to look at that as a good user experience. And that actually ties into another question that I get very often. People ask me, okay, well, how many words should I have on a page? How long should my blog post be? Because people think, oh, well, if I have a lot of words on the page, it'll be good, but how many words do I need? And I always tell them, you have to think about, how do you balance this? Because again, bottom line, how do you get people to stay on the site as long as possible? Obviously, if we have more words on the page, they're going to spend, or the chance that they're going to spend more time reading it is higher. But if you put your dissertation on the page and it's 10,000 words, no one's going to read it. So it's going to work against you. So you always have to have that balance between, okay, how can I optimize it so people can find my content engaging? They stay on the site, they read it, and they get value from it. That's what you have to think about when it comes to user experience.
Yes, and you brought up a very interesting point, which is in regards to the amount of content and work that you put on the website versus the outcome. And we've had customers that say, hey, just my package includes 3 blog posts, then just give me an extra 5 a month, and then let's upload 8 or 9 blog posts, and then that's going to get us more exposure. And that's not how it works. You're opening the door to maybe more traffic, but you're not necessarily improving the experience. And sometimes the traffic isn't even relevant. Sometimes the blog posts that you put, you don't really optimize them afterwards. You don't go back and edit them. You don't see user behavior, what connected with audiences, and then what you can pick up from it. So you do have to be careful to not fall in the quantity trap versus quality, because we still see it. We still see a lot of websites that have hundreds of blog posts and hundreds of landing pages and hundreds of menus with more and more pages and deep linking and things of the sort. But apart from the fact that the optimization process gets tricky, the bigger the website, the trickier it gets. But you're probably not adding value. You're probably just watering down your solution. You're watering down your content and you're just giving more volume. But the actual core foundation of what you're saying isn't necessarily connecting. And that's extremely important, because that used to work 10 or 15 years ago. If you had a lot of content, then eventually, you would get more traffic and somehow you would probably make it work. But nowadays, it's not about that. We actually recommend customers to start simple, to start with clean cut websites, a couple pages, just relevant pages to your services. And then if we see the need for something to be added because it connects with your audience, we do it. And we ask them, talk to your customers. What's a problem that they face all the time? Then let's talk about that, but let's not talk about something that's not a problem just for the sake of, because adding that content is not going to add more relevant traffic. And that's a key element to understand as well. That goes hand in hand with everything
Frank,
else. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Frank, I think you bring up a very good point here. This is one thing that I think people don't quite realize so much when it comes to SEO or even digital marketing as a whole, is that things that used to work before can very quickly not work, or even in some situations turn against you. We talked a little bit about using black hat strategies before. So things that were working before very well, when Google comes out with an update, it's either going to stop working, or if it was black hat, it's going to put your website in the sandbox and you're going to disappear. You hear all these horror stories of companies that were using black hat strategies for their clients. And as soon as Google's algorithm came out, that update came out, all those websites were gone. They lost everything. And they had to start from complete scratch because they were using black hat strategies, and that update completely wiped them out.
Yes and no. And when we talked about Google catching up, they will catch up. Again, we're talking about the biggest company in the world, and we're talking about their core product, their core revenue drivers. So they'll definitely find a way to make the user experience relevant and clean. So if you're doing something to cut corners and try to get there faster, but that doesn't add up, value, and you're just, doing everything in the back end with black hat strategies, it's not going to cut it. Google will catch it. We saw a lot of that a couple of years ago with a lot of link building strategies. And I think we have a couple of slides about that. We have some slides in regards to the link building process. What we used to see a lot back in the day was, we used to see people that would pay third-party solutions to get a lot of links, referring to their website. So you're doing a lot of link building. Hey, I got this blog post. I got this blog post to mention your website or link back to your website. And then that worked for a lot of years. You had companies that would guarantee, 300, 400 websites with domain authority over 50 or something like that. And okay, sure. And then you pay them money to do it. And then as years went by and Google caught up to this and how it was working, the algorithm started changing. And then what you had was a lot of toxic backlinks, because all these websites were fake. People were creating all these blog posts and all these blog websites and these relevant websites just to be able to sell you a backlink that you could use. But it was completely irrelevant. It was, they were selling you an empty service, and they became toxic. And a lot of the work that we've done in the past 2-3 years with new customers that have been doing SEO for a while is we don't even get to start back, the link building process the first 3 or 4 months. What we do is clean up all these links that you have from 7 or 8 years ago that are actually toxic. So we have to go back and check where they're coming from. We have to try to, remove the connection. We reach out to Google and say, hey, I don't want to be associated with this because this isn't relevant. And it ties perfectly with your point in regards to when the algorithm changes, you have to start from scratch. And not only do you have to start from scratch, in a lot of cases, you have to clean up the mess that you did before to make sure that it's not affecting you. So I don't know if you've seen that on your end a lot, but with link building, we've seen so many horror stories for a lot of our customers that it's actually just added more work, and it takes more time down the line to actually optimize their website.
Yeah, I think when it comes to link building, it's either one of two categories. For the most part, it's going to be either they had all these bad links that were built up before and has to be removed. But I also look at it as link building is probably one of the most misunderstood parts of SEO. Because when you talk about backlink, I see a lot of blank stares from business owners. They may have heard what it is, but they don't know exactly what goes into it. But basically, having a backlink is almost like, in an offline example, having a endorsement from somebody. So when you're looking of a backlink, like Google is really shifting more towards quality, not so much the quantity anymore. So again, in an offline example, think about it like if in a bad situation, if you have a convicted felon saying, oh, this guy is good, his business is good. Okay, maybe a little bit shifty. You have 100 convicts saying, oh, this guy's great, he's very trustworthy. You're like, oh, okay, that's probably hurting you more than helping you. But if you get if you get like the president of the United States, or these high-end celebrities, or Warren Buffett saying, oh, this guy's great, his business is good, he's trustworthy, that's going to pay off a lot more than having tons of people who are nobody, or a bad trustworthiness to them, who's endorsing you. So that's another way of thinking about backlinks. It's all about the quality and that trust. And Google, that's what Google's looking for, is are these backlinks providing more trust to you and your business?
Yes, and that's a great way of putting in regards to the convicts, because when we talk about the toxicity of this link building processes, what we've seen, like you mentioned, is that it really hurts your actual organic position. Google really understands that you're not just generating the trust that you should with your customers. And the thing is, back in the day as well, people used to think that off-page strategies were exclusively reserved to link building. So off-page, we do link building and that's it. But it's so much more now in regards to the networking experience that you have with reputable and trustworthy sources, and how you can get something relevant out of those, that that it's important to keep in mind that link building is just one element when we talk about off-page SEO. Doing joint webinars, participating in other blogs, not just, through a link, but you actually posting as a guest blogger somewhere else, getting social media validation from other sources, doing projects together, is doing the networking that it takes to actually get there, is what's so important in this particular process. 8 or 9 years ago, we used to have software that would help us find, link building opportunities quickly, and we used to use it and it used to work. Nowadays, we have specific strategies in charge of generating first a connection with whoever we want to work with in terms of link building, and then actually requesting some sort of, partnership across the board. We don't necessarily do a lot of bulk work anymore. We don't send 500 emails to 500 potential websites. We send 10, and then we try to start a conversation so that the link building process is also organic. Because if you're going to have a link that leads to my website and your blog post or your website, I want you to trust me as well. I want this to make sense for you. I don't want you to recommend me if you don't really believe in my product. So, and the only way to do that is have the actual connection with whoever is going to host you. So when you're thinking in terms of getting people to refer you, make sure that they believe in who you are, make sure that they believe in your product, that they believe in your content, and they're not doing it just for the sake of the business, because down the line, that's not going to come as Google's going to catch it and it's going to say, nah, this is just a business transaction. There isn't really a relevant connection here. And we've seen it, we've been able to secure for some clients one link in particular that might generate so much more relevant traffic than maybe 30 or 40 links that we had before, just because the connection really is organic and it makes sense for both parties. So I think that's always important to mention, because again, people tend to have this idea of SEO being an on-page thing, and you do the technical work, and that's fine as well. There's a lot of content into it as well. But the off-page SEO is just as important, but you have to make sure that there's a human connection as well when you're approaching the strategy there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. To continue the process, I think we can talk a bit about how and what we measure when we talk about SEO. This is important as well, because we live in a result-driven world, right? And when we talk to a customer, what they want to understand is, what are they getting out of their investment? So if they're paying to get content written, or they're paying for the links and everything else, what's coming out of it? And most people, they will just go down to the conversion level of the funnel and say, how many sales am I getting? Or where's the ROI in this? But it's important to understand the entire funnel and what we measure on our end to understand how relevant we're being for these potential customers that are coming into our website. So, basic things like time on page or bounce rate, or how many, pages a user will visit in a session, and things of the sort. They're extremely important metrics, and are probably the fundamental ones that you need to start with to understand if you're doing things right. You might not be generating too many conversions on month one, but if the time on the page is increasing and your bounce rate has significantly decreased, that the work that you're doing is actually being relevant for the users that you're targeting. They're spending more time, you're generating more interest. So these are key metrics that we look at when we have a 6-month strategy, and we try to measure the improvement on each one of them to make sure that we're getting to the final goal, which is generating more goal completions and more transactions. And on the screen, you can see how we approach that funnel as well. At the awareness stage, what are we measuring? We're measuring traffic. We want to make sure that we're getting more people through the door. But once we get that people through the door, how are engagement metrics looking? Is it relevant traffic? Are we, is our bounce rate healthy? Has it improved? Or are we just bringing garbage traffic that comes in and doesn't do anything on our website? Because if we inflate the awareness metrics, but the engagement metrics are low, then the results are not going to be there. And that's what's important, to understand the metrics as part of an entire funnel rather than a single metric. You might have a great bounce rate, but nothing else happens. It's completely irrelevant. You're not doing anything. But if you're doing the funnel and you're looking at the metrics and with this funnel vision, you're going to optimize from top to bottom, and then you're eventually going to get to the point where you're going to see more transactions and ROI. So visibility on how you measure these KPIs is key, but for us also understanding what each KPI tells you of that particular stage of the funnel for each particular customer. And this is how we like to explain it to customers as well, why it's so important that each metric at each level of the funnel is improving, and how one metric might lead to another and eventually get to that particular goal, which is getting more leads and more conversions as well.
Yeah, I would say also, Frank, when it comes to measuring the KPIs, it's one thing people have to really think about when it comes to SEO. SEO is a bit more like, it's a long-term strategy. It's a bit like a massive ship. Is that if you want to make a change quickly, it can't really do that. But once you get on a certain path, it can work very well for you. But also with that in mind is that how are you measuring all of the KPIs? You get to look at it more over a longer period of time. Are things getting better over time? You can't just panic and be like, oh my gosh, our bounce rate went up this month, or our organic traffic went down this month, and oh, it's not working. You look at it over the last several months. What is the trend, number one? But not only that, you also have to look at the seasonality. We work with a lot of medical practices, and we see that December is a slow time. January tends to pick back up again. So you can't say that, okay, from November to December, every single year it goes down, SEO is not working. You can't say that, because historically that's what happens. And every single business, every single industry is going to have some seasonality there. But when you look at it from that point of view, okay, we know December is always going to be a down month, but this year December, was it better than last year December? If it was, okay, we know now that our SEO is working. So that's one thing that I do see a lot of businesses make the mistake on when they're measuring their KPIs. It's number one, looking at over a longer time frame, but not only that, comparing that same time period to a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, however long you've been doing the SEO for.
Yes, and that's a great point as well. When customers are reaching out to find, a potential partner to help you out with SEO, is try to find a partner that has experience in your industry, because that's exactly what you're going to get. If you go with a medical expert, healthcare expert, they're going to know what happens throughout the year. We have a couple of partners that focus on pest control. And we help them out with their paid ads, and now we're experts in pest control. We know exactly how it works in terms of seasonality. We know what people are looking for during winter. We know how that works for their businesses and what they usually shift to, and we know that the big ticket comes in the summer. So if you're going to pair up with an agency that's going to help you with your SEO needs, make sure that they have some sort of experience in your industry so they can identify these type of behaviors. And then when they make decisions, the decisions are more informed. So again, you don't make the mistake of saying, yeah, but quarter over quarter or month over month, I see a decrease. No, my experience in the industry tells me that this is an industry that you do have to look at year over year, because there is difference in behavior with seasonality or a particular factor that impacted the market that I know has an impact in my particular industry. With real estate, for instance, we see it right now. If you work with an agency, if you have a real estate business, make sure that you work with an agency that has real estate experience, because this is such a tricky market nowadays that if you don't really understand the core nature of the business, you might be a great SEO expert or a paid expert for that matter. But if you don't have a real connection with the real estate industry and you don't know how it works and you're not managing other customers, you're just going to make logical decisions based on numbers, but you're not going to understand the context, what's behind the decision making for the particular industry. So that's the situation that we see a lot, that people make decisions based on, rational numbers that they see on a screen, but when they bring in the expertise of the industry, then the decision-making process changes. And this goes hand in hand as well with your setup and how you have it set up as well to track all these numbers, because one thing is just going into Google Analytics and looking at the main KPIs, but another thing is to going beyond the KPIs and then having maybe custom goals to see what's happening. One key thing that we always recommend is making sure that your conversion tracking is in place and is set up correctly. And it sounds like pretty basic advice, but we see it so often. We see so many customers that when you go into the website or the Google Analytics, the conversion goals are not set up correctly, whether it's because technically they're not correct, or they're measuring things that don't necessarily make sense. They're measuring maybe micro moments or particular actions that are not necessarily adding value to anyone, to the user or to the actual company. So conversion tracking is key. One thing that we recommend as well on our end a lot is within the conversion tracking, if you are a business that relies heavily on calls, don't just track the calls, but if you can record the calls, record them and QA them as well, and understand what's happening with the calls, because we see a lot of organic results sometimes where organic is generating a lot of calls. We see a lot of inbound calls coming in, and we see growth month over month. But when we listen to the calls, it's maybe customer support or repeat customers, or it's even, people dialing the wrong number. And we get this idea that the number of the volume of transactions and calls is increasing. But when you dig deeper into the actual conversion, you realize that that's not the case. So conversion tracking is extremely important, not just at the level of the one number, but trying to find a system that will show you the quality of the lead that you're seeing. And also what goes hand in hand with that is, tracking the behavior of users, because our generation is not a one touch point generation. We don't make decisions based on one click, one visit, and usually one purchase. We usually have 8, 10, 12, 15, 20 touch points. If you work in the car industry, it's a 6-month process. It can be at 40, 50 touch points. So tracking the entire flow of behavior is extremely important, because that's what allows you to see the drop points in that particular process. It helps you to see where customers are potentially dropping or where customers are actually making the decision. And then you can optimize based on that. You can say, oh, I have this one blog article that's generating a lot of traffic, but they're not going to my website because of the blog article. They're coming because of somewhere else. And the blog article is just a complementary step in the process. And understanding that and knowing that is what's going to allow you to really be able to optimize. And with so many changes that we're seeing right now, not only the algorithm, but just in policies in general, it can get tricky to be up to speed, but it's important that you are. Right now we're doing the shift to Google Analytics 4 here internally. We already did the transition for all of our clients, even though we still have a couple of months left, I think, to do it, because we know for a fact that we have to prepare for all these significant changes and keep an eye on what's working. There is one thing that we're now recommending to our customers, which is Google Signals, which is basically just a setting that you can enable in Google Analytics. But now with the deprecation of third-party cookies and all these privacy guidelines, this is really the one setting that's going to allow you to capture back some of the data that we used to have available that we're no longer going to have available. Because it aligns with user consent, users have to agree to do this. You're fine in terms of capturing the data, but these are the type of things that you need to be aware of in terms of conversion tracking and behavior tracking, if you really want to understand how your efforts are performing, and if you want to have the right data to be able to optimize efficiently as well. So how are you guys dealing with this switch to Google Analytics 4? And I'll tell you my personal opinion. I'm a fan of universal analytics, the visibility and the reports and everything else. I'm a big fan. I don't want to, throw shade or throw Google Analytics 4 under the bus, but to me, it's a pretty simplified version of Universal Analytics. But how are you guys dealing with it? What's your personal opinion of Google Analytics 4?
Yeah, I personally like the Universal Analytics better. I feel that the data that we're looking for is better. So, but our team is still getting used to GA4 and what it can provide. I think the biggest thing is it's more focused on the conversions versus just the overall data. I mean, I do like the UA because of the overall data, but it'd be interesting to see once they make that full shift over, just how much it'd be able to help us out on. And you did bring up one very important point, Frank, that I think the listeners may not realize was the call tracking and recording those calls. Because not only is that it can make a huge difference in your business, especially if you have employees, how they're answering the phones, how they're talking to your customers. I'll give you this great story. We have one client that we set up the call tracking, call recording for. And I think 2 days after we set it up, she listened to one of the calls that her employees picked up. And she's like, holy crap, I didn't realize this was happening. Basically what happened is that they're running this campaign, this special offer. Someone calls in, the receptionist picks up. Hey, what can I help you with? Oh yeah, I'm calling about the special offer. Special offer? We're not doing a special offer. It's like, yeah, I saw it online. Okay, hold on. Puts them on hold for 2 minutes, comes back. Yeah, we're not doing a special offer. Okay, well, you know what? I'd like to come in and see the doctor. Okay, great, hold on. Puts them on hold for 2 minutes, comes back. Okay, doctor's available this day. Oh, sorry, I can't make it that day. What about this day? Nope, doctor's not available. Okay, bye. Okay, bye. the doctor was furious when she listened to this call, but she's like, you know what? It is my fault. Like I didn't prepare the front desk. Like they need training. But this is the point of having that call tracking, is that you don't know what's going on, what your employees are saying. But from this one call, she now realized, okay, now training is needed, and now we don't have to lose all these patients. Because up to that point, how many patients did they lose because of this person wasn't trained? It could have been tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars that they lost because of this poor interaction. So that's why it's really important to have that call tracking and that call recording, because it could lead to thousands, tens, hundreds, millions of dollars in lost revenue. So, but that's how we're looking at tracking, as the calls. And again, it's going to be interesting to see how GA4 kind of comes in, like what they end up doing with it. But that's kind of what we're looking at. But for right now, just looking at very simply, what are the conversions coming in? What's your organic traffic? What's the keyword rankings? And what's happening on these calls?
Yeah, and that example you brought up right now, it resonates and lands so well here in Ireland as well, because we had another customer as well where what we were seeing is, we were seeing an increase in calls month over month, and when we were getting the feedback, they were saying, no, these calls are not qualified, and they're not good calls. So we're like, why do you feel they're not qualified? And we weren't listening to the calls yet. It would say, oh no, what's happening is we're getting a lot of competitor calls. So people looking for our competitor, they're calling in. And we were like, okay, can you give us some of the recordings? Because we didn't have access to recordings. It's like, sure, we can share it. So, someone would call in and say, hey, I'm looking for Dr. X. And then whoever picked up the phone would say, no, this is Dr. Y's office. So yeah, wrong number, goodbye. Like, do you understand that someone that's looking for a doctor, a direct competitor, is looking for what you have to offer? And if you have a unique selling proposition, you have someone that has a very high intent on the phone that might not necessarily be looking for you in particular, but it's such a hot opportunity to capture this particular customer, especially if you have some added value to offer compared to the competitor, right? Because, this particular customer, they had great reviews, they had great prices, and they had a lot of unique selling propositions compared to these competitors. We're like, it's not even that hard to turn them. You're not competing against a giant. You're competing against someone that's probably not offering a service as good as yours. So we said, wouldn't it make more sense to train your sales team and, just really take these as opportunities rather than a wrong number, and say, hey, actually, no, but, what are you looking for? Because this is Dr. Y's office and we offer the same thing or more or better. Or, we do get a lot of customers coming from Dr. X, from Dr. Y. There's so many ways to approach it and not miss the opportunity that you're not going to find and you're not going to see if you don't, track efficiently and you're using the right tools. And that leads me to our next slide, which is the tools that you're using, not only to measure, but also to optimize. Because when we think in terms of visibility, sure, we think of analytics, and that gives you probably the core foundation of how you analyze your SEO efforts. But there's so many tools out there that you can use to make sure that you're seeing the right things, that you're making the right decisions, or that actually take action for you. Google has a set of tools. So outside of analytics, we have Search Console and the page speed insights and things of the sort. But we also like to work with third-party tools as well that we know help us see the bigger picture. Competitor research, different types of keyword ranking analysis, etc. With the switch to GA4, I do feel that it's a bit more limited compared to Universal Analytics. It is important that you have in mind that there are other tools available that can help you. Here at Weishark internally, we're big fans of SEMrush, which is one of the industry standards, because it gives you so much visibility on a lot of things, not only on your website, but for the industry, a lot of really good insights on competitors, potential backlinking opportunities and things of the sort. So we always recommend that you have a strong and powerful tech stack if you want to approach the SEO strategy the right way, because there's a lot of great tools, not necessarily AI tools, but just SEO specific tools that will take you there. So we're big fans of SEMrush. We also use SpyFu as well for competitor research. We use all the Google tools that are available there to review SEO metrics and SEO performance as well. But there's so many out there that we know for a fact that there's always going to be a good fit. What do you guys use on your end when you talk about SEO optimization and reporting and things of the sort?
Yeah, we use Ubersuggest primarily, Ahrefs, SEMrush. We also look as well. Moz we use a little bit more as a resource just to kind of get an idea of what's going on in the industry. But when it comes to call recording, we use CallRail. That's the one that we use as well. So, but I mean, of course, the Google Analytics and Search Console and all that. But yeah, Ubersuggest, Ahrefs, SEMrush, very powerful tools. And I would say those are the main ones we use. We use Ubersuggest a bit more though, but can't go wrong with any of those ones.
Yeah, and another key element in the tech stack is also the reporting, because outside of the tools that you use internally as a strategist to optimize the account, the way you communicate your results and what you're doing to your customers is sometimes just as important. Because if you're doing a lot of great work, but your customer doesn't understand the added value, especially if they're not tech savvy or SEO savvy at least, there is a missed opportunity. And you might get to a point where you're doing really good with the SEO strategies, but the customer isn't convinced and they're going to say, no, I don't see the added value. So reporting and the storytelling is such an important element, because at the end of the day, you can make a lot of technical decisions and you can be an expert in the field. But if you're not getting the right feedback from the customer, you might be missing on a lot of great opportunities. And the only way you're going to get the right feedback from the customer is if they're seeing the right story and they're understanding what you're doing in the back end. So reporting for us is key. We've tried a lot of reporting tools. Now we're set on AdClicks. It's a pretty good tool as well that allows you to integrate a lot of sources. But the storytelling aspect of it is fundamental. So when we present a report to a customer, we give them the dashboard, but what we try to build is a story. I don't want to give you 10 KPIs, or I don't want to give you 10 metrics that I can tell you that are higher or lower month over month. I want to tell you what we're seeing in terms of the strategy and what story we're seeing for our customers and what that means to you as well. So for us, reporting is key. Presenting this as well, with the phone call where you talk to the customer and you get their feedback, for us is just as important as almost the optimizations and everything else that we do on our end. And I think we have, just to do a time check, we have 4 minutes left, Dan. So I'm going to speed up. I think we have, you guys have hundreds of success stories, but I know we were discussing some before joining the webinar, just to see really, when a successful SEO strategy happens, what do you see? Maybe you can tell us a bit about these 2 particular customers that you had and what you were seeing. And then maybe we can run through a couple of questions before we wrap up the webinar.
Yeah, so one was a dermatologist, California, never did any type of SEO before. So basically starting from scratch. But after just doing 1 year of SEO for them, their Google My Business Now, Google Business Profile numbers all saw an increase of about 80%. So website visits, direction requests, calls from there. That's really the power, basically almost doubling her numbers she had before. The other one was actually a doctor in Beverly Hills, saw a 30% increase in his website traffic. And this is actually someone who was doing SEO before, but it was a company that was doing a very poor job of SEO. So that's one thing you have to be careful of, is that not all SEO companies are created equally. And he's been with us now probably, 3-4 years, and he loves us. But he just didn't know before, hey, I didn't know my old SEO company was doing a bad job. So that's one thing if you can do SEO, definitely hire a professional, but you just have to be a bit careful about, okay, what's track record? What's their history? Do they really know what they're doing?
And also being transparent with customers, which again ties to reporting and the communication, is, be honest about results, but be honest about the strategy as well and what you're doing. One key element I want to highlight here in this particular slides in client A is that this was after 1 year of SEO. And that's extremely important in any part of the conversations, because SEO is a long play. It's a long-term strategy, and results come gradually. And it's so important to keep this in mind as well, because when you're setting expectations with your customers, when you're talking to your customers, if they don't understand that this is a long-term strategy, in a lot of cases, what you get to see is that they drop the strategy midway through. And you're getting great results and you're seeing month over month, quarter over quarter improvements, but you have to understand the bigger picture and the long play. I always compare it to going to the gym. When you go to the gym, if you put in the effort every day, you're not going to see results from one day to another. But after 6, 8, 12 months, when you compare and you look in the mirror year over year, that's where you're going to see what's happening. So for me, SEO, it's the same way as well, but it's also so important for people to have the right expectations in terms of time, because if you give it time, then you get results like this. You get an 80% increase in the calls and the numbers as well, after just 1 year of strategy. So thank you for going over these. We have 1 minute left. So what I want to do is, we have a couple of questions. I'm going to shoot, let me pick at least 2 so we can maybe go over them. How do you think ChatGPT will or is already impacting SEO? I think we already covered some of this. Dan, maybe you want to give in your thoughts again, just 2 or 3 bullet points in regards to how it will impact and what to be careful on, because we know we have to be careful. So maybe you want to take this one.
Yeah, sure. I would say that it could be a good tool to help with it, but I don't think it's something that's going to replace everything. There still needs to be a human component, but it's an extra tool that will make you more efficient. But it's not going to be a replacement tool to be like, okay, I don't need my content writers, my copywriters, and just have this. So if anything, it'll be more of a supplement. But I think it's definitely a very powerful technology. I'm excited to see what it'll do in the future. But for now, we're using it more as a tool, not replacement.
Yeah, well, the way we like to see it, what we would recommend is, if you can use the tool to get back time, do it, and then use that time to put it back into strategy. So if it can help you automate certain technical tasks that don't need too much insight in terms of just a human train of thought, do it. And it's a great tool to do it. but use that time to strategize and be more strategical about the decision making. And that's what we recommend with any automation tool, not just ChatGPT. So, and then the last question is, how do you present SEO results that make sense to your clients, especially if they're not SEO savvy? This is a good one. You wanna take it then?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Basically, we look at it, what is the bottom line? It's, are you getting calls, are you getting conversions? And then working backwards from there. It's, okay, how's those numbers looking? How's your organic traffic looking? How's your ranking, the change in your rankings looking? A lot of SEO companies, all they give you is, this is the changes in your ranking, and that's it. So, but that's not enough of a picture, because even though SEO is one of the hardest to figure out an ROI for, there are certain pieces you could look at to figure out, okay, is this working overall? For us, typically we found that giving a lot of data to our clients, they're just not going to look at it. So we try and simplify it. How's your rankings going, up or down? How's your organic traffic, up or down? And how are your calls, conversions, whatever your conversions are, whether they're calls or form submissions or website purchases, whatever it is, how is that looking? Those three metrics should give you a fairly good 30,000 foot view of how things are going. But that's how we would get an idea of, is this campaign working or not?
Yes, and just to wrap it up again, think in terms of a story. If you're a great storyteller, you can present results and it will resonate with your customer. If you're just going through a table with metrics, if they're not savvy in particular, then it's just not going to make sense. Even if they're getting great results, you need to connect with them on the things that they understand and matter the most. So if you're talking about conversions and you're talking to a doctor, talk to them about patients and talk to them about new patients. Don't talk to them about new calls or new customers. If you're talking to lawyers, talk about, the number of cases that they closed and make it relatable to their industry as well, so that the story makes sense for them. So, and I think that's all the time we have right now. I think we're 2 minutes over time, so I'm going to wrap it up. But thank you everyone for joining today. Thank you, Daniel. This has been extremely fun. For everyone that joined, we're going to be sending a recap of everything we covered. You're going to be getting the deck as well. Anyone that wasn't able to join as well, they're going to be getting an email. If you want to continue the conversation, feel free to reach out to Daniel or to myself. If you need some support, please feel free to reach out as well. And again, thank you, Daniel, for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you here. It's usually we have guests from all different industries, but I always love to have guests that have experience in the SEO world, because it's such a changing world and I'm passionate about the subject. So thank you very much for joining us, and stay tuned for our next episode. So thank you, everyone.